Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. On our wedding anniversary, I brought our old, worn-out marriage certificate to the Civil Affairs office to get a replacement. But the clerk looked at it in surprise and said, "This certificate is fake. According to the records, you're unmarried. There's no record of a marriage registration." I froze. That couldn't be. My husband, David Armstrong, and I had been married for 50 years. Then he pulled up the file. David Armstrong was indeed registered as married, but his wife was listed as Emily Shaw. Emily Shaw was David's widowed sister-in-law who had served for years as a military doctor, constantly moving with the army. Shaking, I rushed home to confront David, hoping he would deny it. But he didn't. "Haven't I done enough for you in this life?" I asked, trembling. He looked at me with cold indifference. "Emily is my true love. I only ever wanted to marry her and have children with her." Even our son tried to comfort me, saying, "Dad just didn't want to upset Grandma and Grandpa, so he kept it secret all these years. You're not young anymore. What more do you want?" That's when the truth hit me. The child I raised with all my heart wasn't even mine. Years ago, Emily and I gave birth at the same time. David swapped our babies so that Emily's child could be raised by someone more educated, me and my own biological child. He drowned him in a pond the moment he was born. The cruelest part is I actually raised Emily's child like he was my own. I sent him to Harvard, devoted my life to him. In the end, when I discovered everything, I was so overwhelmed with rage and heartbreak that I passed out. When I opened my eyes again, I was in labor back to the day I gave birth. The pain was so familiar. A harsh white hospital light glared above me. David stood at my bedside holding a newborn, smiling gently. "Look how cute our baby boy is." I looked around the room, then at David's much younger face, and realized with shock that I had been reborn to the day of my child's birth. The very day David murdered my real son. Panic gripped me. Ignoring the pain after giving birth, I reached out my arms. "Give him to me now." Surprised, David handed me the baby. I immediately pulled away the blanket and opened his little pants. There it was, an unripe, round birthmark on his butt. My blood rushed to my head. This was the illegitimate child of David and Emily, the same ungrateful boy I raised in my last life. And David was still trying to fool me. Keeping his tone casual, he said, "They say babies with birthmarks on there but are lucky. Our son will definitely have a prosperous life full of success." I let out a cold laugh. Of course, because I would be the fool to raise him. I would work myself to the bone, provide everything, send him to Harvard. In the end, he'd tell me to stop fussing over Dad and Aunt Emily's affair. Thinking of all that, I wanted nothing more than to tear the three of them apart. But first, I had to find my real child. Suppressing my fury, I asked David, "How's Emily doing? What about her baby?" David's face twitched. "She's fine. Gave birth to a boy. You take care of our baby. I'll go check on her." He got up and left quickly. I watched him go, then called a nurse over and whispered a few instructions. A few minutes later, I carried the baby into Emily's room. Both she and David had been called away by the nurse. And there, lying carelessly on the hospital bed, was my real son. His breath faint, nearly gone. I didn't hesitate. I switched the babies right away. Holding the tiny, fragile body in my arms, I felt tears well in my eyes. Even though it was the first time I saw him, I could feel it in my bones. This was my real son. In my previous life, David left claiming he was heading to his military post, and took Emily with him under the excuse of her being a military doctor. They lived a carefree life thousands of miles away. When they ran out of money, they came to me. When they missed their son, they came to visit. And I deceived all along, held on to a fake marriage certificate, and raised the child of those two heartless people. I slaved away my whole life thinking I was giving my son the best. They reaped it all. A perfect son accepted to Harvard, handed to them on a silver platter. But this time, I swear I'll make them pay. I'll ruin their lives. I'll make them suffer the consequences of their betrayal. Not long after I returned to the hospital room, David and Emily walked in together. The moment Emily stepped through the door, her eyes locked onto the baby in my arms. She beamed with delight. "Oh my, this little one is just so perfect, so plump and fair. You can tell he's going to be smart." When she noticed the cotton blanket I had wrapped him in, she frowned and rushed forward. "Why are you using cotton? That could irritate his skin. Use these instead." She pulled out a bundle of baby clothes, all made from fine silk and soft fabrics. Then she leaned in, clearly eager to take the baby from my arms. I shifted away, my tone cold. "He's my child. I'll take care of him." Failing to get her hands on the baby, Emily's smile faltered for a moment before she forced it back on. "You're a college graduate after all. I'm sure you'll raise him well and help him become someone great." She looked at the baby with eyes full of affection, as if he were truly hers. That forced display of motherly love made my stomach churn. Then David spoke up, his voice gentle. "Now that the baby's here, we should choose a name. How about Simon Armstrong?" Before I gave birth, David had suggested several names for me to choose from, but he had always favored Simon the most. Later, I found out all of those names had been chosen in advance by him and Emily. He liked them because she did. I rejected the name on the spot. "No, his name will be Caleb Armstrong." David's face darkened. "Didn't we agree on the names I gave you? Simon sounds so elegant." I gave him a cold laugh and held the baby out slightly. "Then why don't you raise him yourself?" "What? Still hoping? I'll pour my whole heart into raising this child." He shut up immediately. Emily didn't look pleased. Her voice turned oddly sharp. "Since you named him yourself, I hope you'll treat him right. I want to see him succeed, make you proud, and bring glory to the family." I responded coolly. "No need to worry, Emily. You should focus on taking care of your own child." At the mention of her son, she pursed her lips in distaste, unable to hide her irritation. "Mine? He's nothing but bad luck. I can't stand him. Just looking at him makes me miserable." The baby had been born less than a day ago, and she was already expressing hatred. "Such misfortune," she muttered. My whole body went cold, sweat breaking out on my palms. If I had been even a little later, I wouldn't have gotten my child back. But what chilled me even more was how David and Emily talked about the child they had just let die. Their faces showed nothing but indifference. I couldn't help but ask, "Is he really gone?" David's eyes flashed with disdain, his tone certain. "Of course, newborns are fragile. He probably just choked or suffocated. It's not like that's rare." He paused, then added gently, "You should take better care of Caleb. He's the family's only hope now." Emily didn't argue with him. In fact, she didn't care at all. Her eyes never left my baby. That little bastard could never compare to David's real son. "Good riddance," she said without the slightest shame. I lowered my eyes, bitter mockery rising in my chest. I used to think Emily was just heartbroken from losing her husband and child, and that she poured all her love into my son because of that. Now I knew the truth, and everything made sense. Fighting the urge to vomit, I gave them a few cold words and sent them away. Then I made a trip to the morgue. Sure enough, Emily's baby was there. I took a careful look to confirm this was the child they had drowned with their own hands. On my way back to the hospital room, I purposely took the quieter corridor and accidentally stumbled upon David and Emily entangled in a corner, kissing passionately. Emily clung to David, gasping and breathless. "David, we finally got rid of that little curse today. You're not feeling guilty, are you? After all, he was your son." David's eyes were full of tenderness. Without hesitation, he replied, "Of course not. The only child I care about is the one you gave birth to. The one she had was just a worthless brat." Then he added with a smug grin, "Still, she's proven useful. Smart enough to raise our child without suspecting a thing. And once we're stationed at the base, no one will be around to interfere." "Isn't that what you've always wanted?" Emily blushed, playfully punching his chest. You're such a scoundrel." I stood frozen in place, stomach churning with nausea. Taking advantage of the fact that they were tangled up together, I grabbed a nearby brick and hurled it at them with all my strength. Then I turned and ran. Behind me, the two of them were startled and panicked, but didn't dare shout or make a scene. They scrambled around in a flustered mess while I had already made it back to the main hall. I borrowed the landline from a nurse and called my supervisor on the spot to apply for a job transfer. I was part of the very first class of students after the National College entrance exam resumed. I got into university and after graduating, married David Armstrong. Because of him, I gave up countless opportunities. Even when my supervisor encouraged me to pursue a promising career up north, I refused because I was pregnant. But now, I wasn't going to let them keep me trapped anymore. Even if I had to take my child with me, I would still leave this place. After being discharged and returning home, the first thing I did was dig out our marriage certificate. David, being a battalion commander, must have found some way to forge the document. It looked nearly identical to a real one, but he had secretly registered a legal marriage with Emily at the Civil Affairs office. It was pathetic. I'd clung to that fake certificate like it was a treasure, keeping it safe for 50 years. Furious, I tore it in half. Good thing it was fake. When I leave in a month, I won't even need to think about how to get divorced. While Emily and I were both still in postpartum confinement, she stayed in bed all day like a queen. Food and clothes were brought to her without her lifting a finger. David fed her himself. Sometimes when he went too far and worried it might draw suspicion, he'd turn to me and say, "Emily lost her baby. She's emotionally fragile. You're the only one I can count on now." I said nothing. He acted like he didn't see me caring for our baby day and night, never asking once if I was tired. Every night when the baby cried, David would get annoyed and say he was switching rooms to get some sleep. Without a second thought, he'd slip into Emily's room. The next morning, Emily would cover her mouth and giggle. "You're amazing, sis-in-law. You've got such dark circles. Didn't sleep a wink last night, huh?" Her tone was smug and full of glee. She had no idea I was already quietly preparing for my departure. I started packing little by little behind their backs. David was so caught up in his own world, he didn't notice a thing until one evening. He came in holding an envelope, his expression dark. "Mia, what is this?" The envelope had bold letters printed on the front. It was the transfer order from my supervisor. I stayed calm, took it from him, and casually tossed it into the fireplace. You know, my supervisors tried more than once to transfer me, but with a newborn, how could I possibly leave you too? It's just a formality. I've already turned it down. I knew exactly what David liked to hear. The transfer letter, now meaningless, burned quietly in the flames. His expression relaxed. "That's good. A married woman should be home raising her child. You're so smart. Perfect for teaching our son." Then, as if to shift the subject, he added, "The baby's almost a month old. I'm planning a banquet to celebrate. After all, he's our family's only heir." I smiled and agreed easily. Sounds perfect. The more people, the merrier. Time flew by, and soon the day of the full-month celebration arrived. True to his word, David had pulled out all the stops. He booked out the entire banquet hall at Goring Restaurant and invited high-ranking officers, colleagues, and every friend and relative imaginable. He was so proud he couldn't stop grinning, welcoming guests in a fancy tailored suit. Emily stood beside him in a stylish Western dress. The two of them looked more like a couple than ever. As the celebration reached its peak, David raised his glass for a toast. He turned to me with a look of deep affection. "Mia, thank you for giving me a son. But I'm a soldier. I have responsibilities. I'll be heading to the base soon, so I'm counting on you to raise him well. I believe you'll raise him into someone exceptional." Emily's smile was radiant. "I'm also military personnel, so I'll be going with David. Don't worry, sis-in-law. I'll take good care of him. You just focus on raising the child at home," Emily said with a bright smile. The people around us praised them one after another, calling them noble and selfless, willing to sacrifice family for the good of the country. I couldn't help but clench my fists. David seemed to have completely forgotten how he once pressured me into giving up my career to stay home and take care of the household. Now they looked at the child with such affection, so sincere and full of love. The officers were even more pleased. One of the senior officials said warmly, "Even Comrade Emily treats this child as her own. It's clear your family gets along very harmoniously. I feel confident in trusting this mission to you, David." David beamed with pride, his grin stretching nearly ear to ear. Relatives took turns holding the baby, admiring his sweet smile. One of them looked at me and chuckled. Mia, he looks just like you. He's going to grow up to be such a handsome young man. Emily, hearing this, scowled and shot the relative a glare. She snatched the baby up immediately and said sharply, "Boys should resemble their fathers. He clearly takes after David. They're practically cut from the same mold." The relative glanced at me awkwardly, but I simply smiled and said nothing. It was clear that Emily truly wanted to spend a bit more time with the baby before leaving, but she barely held him for a few minutes before he suddenly burst into loud, inconsolable wails right in her face. Startled, she let out a shriek. His diaper had leaked, leaving a wet stain on the blanket. A relative quickly stepped in, speaking warmly. "Oh dear, looks like he peed. Let me help change him." Emily may have felt affection for the child, but she clearly had no intention of taking responsibility. Otherwise, she wouldn't have dumped him on me to raise in the first place. She wrinkled her nose, handed him off with disgust, and watched from the side as the relative began changing the diaper. But the moment the clothes were peeled back, her face turned deathly pale. A shrill scream escaped her lips. David came over frowning. "What's going on? Why are you shouting?" Emily stood frozen, staring at the baby's exposed skin. Her voice trembled. Why doesn't he have the birthmark?" Others hadn't yet processed what she meant, but David's face immediately fell. He grabbed the baby and began checking frantically. In the entire past month, neither of them had bothered to truly look after the baby. This was their first time actually seeing the skin beneath his clothes. They turned him over again and again, searching desperately. The baby, irritated by all the rough handling, wrinkled his nose and started crying again. I seized the moment to step forward, my tone urgent and scolding. "What do you think you're doing? Give me back my son." Emily stood rooted in place. When she heard my voice, she snapped her head around and lunged at me, shrieking, "Mia, it was you, wasn't it? You did this. Where is my baby?" I shoved her away with one arm and took my son back, holding him tightly against my chest. My voice was icy. "What are you talking about, Emily? I don't understand a word. This is my son. Wasn't your child stillborn?" Her face twisted and she clawed at the air like a madwoman. "No, that's not right. You switched them. You stole my baby. Give him back." Her words were jumbled, panicked, her expression contorted with horror and rage as if she'd rip me apart the next second. I stared her down, the corners of my mouth slowly curling into a cold smile. "This is my son, Caleb Armstrong. How could he possibly be yours? And the birthmark? Isn't that something your poor baby had? Mine doesn't." I let out a long sigh and pulled out a small stack of photographs. "I even asked the hospital to take pictures of your son. You didn't want to pay for the funeral, so I covered the cost. I know you're heartbroken, but that doesn't mean you can pretend my child is yours." In the black and white photo was the lifeless body of the baby they had drowned themselves. A clear, distinct birthmark could be seen on his skin. Emily shook from head to toe, refusing to face the truth that she had killed her own child. Her whole body trembled as she screamed like a lunatic. "No, that's impossible. It was supposed to be your son who died." By now the guests had caught on. Whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd, and all eyes turned toward David. "Captain Armstrong, what's going on?" Someone finally asked. "Didn't Comrade Emily's baby pass away a month ago? Your child looks perfectly healthy. How could he have died?" Everyone knew it was Emily's baby who had died. And the child in my arms, he was mine. No one understood what had triggered Emily's outburst, and the scene quickly descended into chaos. The room filled with loud voices and confusion. David's face turned deathly pale, but he had no explanation that could justify what was happening. Emily still wanted to say more. "The one who died wasn't." But David's face changed, and he immediately reached out to cover her mouth. He instinctively glanced at the senior officer nearby and hissed under his breath, "What nonsense are you spouting? Are you insane?" Emily pounded her fists against him, her eyes bloodshot as she screamed, "David Armstrong, you heartless bastard. You were in on it, weren't you? You plotted this with that. You tricked me." David's face darkened, and he elbowed her sharply, muttering under his breath, "Enough. Calm down." "How do you expect me to calm down?" she shrieked. "You told me the one who drowned was Mia's son. That our son was safe being raised by her. Give me back my son." Her words sent another wave of shocked gasps through the crowd. The murmuring grew louder. What is she saying? That they were trying to drown Mia's baby and accidentally killed their own? But hasn't Mia been raising the child this whole month? Didn't Emily herself say her baby died? What the hell is going on here? The whispers turned into a flood of judgment. I can't believe it. David Armstrong was actually trying to hurt a child. How cruel can you be? One voice after another joined in, disgust and condemnation raining down on both David and Emily. I stood at the back, watching the chaos unfold with cold satisfaction. What was supposed to be a celebratory banquet had turned into a public scandal. The unexpected revelations left everyone reeling. Even the leaders seated at the head table were turning grim. One of them stood and shouted, "Captain Armstrong, what's going on here? Explain yourself now." With Emily sobbing hysterically on one side and his superior glaring at him on the other, David was pale as a sheet, sweating through his collar. His eyes darted around the room until they landed on me. Standing at the edge of the crowd with Caleb in my arms, he pointed at me and yelled, "I don't know anything. It was Mia. She planned all this. It was her scheme. She told me the baby had drowned. And Emily, out of pity, gave her our son to raise. We didn't know she had already switched them. She's the one who killed the baby. She tricked us both." He pushed the blame onto me in an instant, washing his hands clean while playing the victim. Some of the guests caught up in the confusion turned to me and asked, "Is that true?" David didn't hesitate. "Of course it is. Why would I ever harm my own son? This is all a misunderstanding. Mia, is she right in the head? You shouldn't believe a word she says." I stared at him, lips curling into a bitter smile. "David Armstrong, don't just lie to everyone. Are you trying to lie to yourself, too? You were the one who switched the babies. You were the one who tried to drown him, and now you want to twist the truth." His brows furrowed, and without thinking he blurted out, "You saw the birthmark on that child the day he was born. You had to be the one who switched them afterward. This has nothing to do with me." I tilted my head slightly, my voice razor sharp. "Oh, so you admit you knew about the birthmark? Then how did that baby end up in my hospital room? Wasn't it you who made the switch first?" He fell silent, stunned and speechless. I raised my voice for all to hear. "If I hadn't realized in time and switched them back, the one who'd be dead now is my son." Fury burned through me. I lifted my hand and slapped him hard across the face. "You tried to murder your own child. Your flesh and blood. Are you even human?" My voice trembled with emotion as I lifted my head, eyes brimming with tears. "Dear family and friends, at first I thought they had made a mistake at the hospital. Just a simple baby mix-up. I didn't think too much of it. But now I see the truth. David Armstrong, this monster conspired with Emily to murder my child. By sheer chance they failed. And now they have the audacity to frame me." David's expression twisted with fury. His eyes burned with hatred as if he could kill me where I stood. "Lies. You're slandering me. Mia, shut your damn mouth. You have no proof," David growled. Emily glared at me with venom in her eyes. Her hatred practically tangible. "Stop pretending to be righteous. My son is dead. Yours is alive. Isn't that proof enough? You murderer." But their stories kept shifting back and forth, the logic shaky at best. No matter how loudly they wailed or played the victim, no one was convinced. My eyes burned red, but my voice was cold and steady. "Heaven is watching. Did you really think you could get away with everything? It's precisely because there is justice in this world that your plans failed." David tried to say something else, but our superior officer cut him off with a stern voice. "Enough, David. I'm deeply disappointed in you. Your lies are full of holes. Do you take us all for fools?" David's expression turned desperate. "This has nothing to do with me, sir. Please just let me explain." But the officer's face remained grim as he interrupted coldly. "You need to reflect on yourself. You're not going to the base anymore. As for the crimes you may have committed, we'll investigate every detail thoroughly." At those words, the color drained completely from David's face. His lips trembled, and he collapsed to the floor in defeat. The officer sighed, then turned to me with genuine sincerity. "Comrade Mia, I failed in my oversight. I didn't notice David's misconduct in time, but this is ultimately your family's matter. It's not my place to intervene too much. You must decide for yourself. I understood the hidden message in his tone. Without hesitation, I replied, "Thank you for your concern, but I promise this will never happen again. I'm transferring to Beijing soon." David didn't dare lash out in front of the officer, but the moment he looked at me, his eyes were full of malice. His voice dropped, seething with threat. "No way. Do you even know what you're saying? You burned the transfer letter yourself that day, didn't you? You'd better think carefully, Mia. Where can you even go without me?" I gave him a cool glance, then smirked, both satisfied and mocking. That was just the notification copy. The real transfer order was already processed the moment it was sent out. David's eyes met mine, dark with rage. "Mia, we're husband and wife. I won't let you leave me. You'll never get away. I'm your husband. Are you really going to turn your back on me?" I simply smiled. He had no idea how long I'd been waiting for this moment. I pulled out our torn marriage certificate and tossed the pieces at his feet. His face twisted slightly as he tried to keep up the act. "Why would you tear that up? You think that changes anything? Even if you shred it, it doesn't undo our marriage." I clapped my hands once. "Exactly. Even if I tear it to pieces, we were never really married." David's expression faltered. He looked at me, stunned, searching my face as if trying to figure out if I was serious. "What are you talking about? We had a legal ceremony. We registered properly." I let out a cold laugh and cut him off. "All right, enough. You're tired from pretending, and I'm tired of listening. The only reason I didn't destroy this fake certificate entirely was because I wanted to ask, how exactly did you forge something so convincing?" As soon as I said that, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Not just. Everyone present gasped. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. "A fake marriage certificate? They've been married for so many years. How could it be fake? That's unbelievable. It looked so real," I said calmly. "If you don't believe me, go ahead and have it examined. No matter how good a fake is, anyone who's seen the real thing can tell the difference." Someone bent down, about to pick up the torn certificate, but David suddenly lunged forward, blocking the way and shouting, "Get your hands off it." That outburst only confirmed everyone's suspicion. Something was clearly wrong. The officer immediately ordered the guard, "Collect that document for examination." The guards moved swiftly, and it didn't take long for the results to come back. David's marriage certificate was indeed a fake. The entire room erupted in shock. People looked at David like they didn't recognize him anymore. A fake certificate. What was he up to? Unbelievable. How shameless. Could it be he faked the marriage just to scam her? Someone whispered in disbelief. "That's disgusting," another muttered. David's face grew darker and more terrifying with each word from the crowd. The humiliation was suffocating him. And just then, I dropped another bomb. "David, if you wanted to separate, you could have just said it. You had me cooking and cleaning for you, while you secretly registered a marriage and had a child with your widowed sister-in-law. What was the point of all that?" He looked up in shock, his voice trembling. "How much do you actually know?" I stared back coldly, saying nothing. Others began questioning me, clearly stunned. "Comrade Mia, could there be some misunderstanding? This is just too much." I curled my lips in a bitter smile. "Too much? You want to know who the father of Emily's baby is? David. That's who." She and David went and got a marriage certificate behind my back. The fake certificate David gave me was only to cover up their relationship. I turned to my father, who stood speechless. "Dad, if you don't believe me, feel free to go to our house. Their certificate is still in Emily's room. It's easy to prove. Not that anyone needed to check. Emily had practically confessed everything already." She clutched David's arm and shook it furiously. "David, are you even a man? How can you just let them humiliate me like this?" David, already overwhelmed, was growing increasingly annoyed. He finally snapped, brushing her off. "Enough. Is now really the time for this?" His patience was clearly worn thin. He couldn't even be bothered to pretend with her anymore. Then he turned to me, eyes desperate, voice suddenly soft and pleading. "Mia, it was all a misunderstanding. I wasn't thinking clearly before and I hurt you. But from now on, I'll make it right. Just give me a chance to make it up to you. I remained unmoved, my tone distant. There's nothing left to discuss. Step aside. David reached out, trying to grab my hand. Don't forget, we have a son together. How will you raise him all on your own? I can't stand the thought of you working yourself to death. Mia, as long as you stay, you'll never want for anything. You won't need to work, and there'll always be money to spend. Isn't that a good life? Please don't leave. I'll prove to you how sincere I am. He poured out sweet words like, honey, but it was all meaningless now. Off to the side, Emily finally couldn't hold back anymore. Her tone turned bitter and sarcastic. David, what's the meaning of this? Our relationship's been exposed. Everyone knows we're the real couple, so why are you still clinging to her? She sneered and added, some women really know how to play their cards. Just a few words and a man's soul gets hooked. Who knows how many times she's used that trick? Before I could even respond, David turned on her, eyes icy. Shut your mouth. Mia is my real rightful wife. If it hadn't been for your seduction, I never would have lost my mind and married you. I was meant to be with Mia. You were the one who ruined everything between us. Emily looked as though she'd been struck. She staggered, pale and trembling. David Armstrong, you bastard. My husband wasn't even cold in the ground before you pulled me into your bed. You got me pregnant and promised we'd be together forever. You said we'd live as husband and wife as soon as the timing was right. And now you're just going to throw me away. She lunged at him and grabbed onto him desperately, and the two of them began to struggle. As they shouted and flailed, Emily's words became more and more obscene and humiliating. The guests around us stood frozen, mouths agape at the scene, their expressions turning from shock to disgust. One by one, they began whispering harsh judgments. Heartless man. I heard someone say. Disgusting. David finally broke free of Emily's grip, bruised and battered. He looked a complete mess, but still had the nerve to turn to me with desperate eyes. Mia, I'll make it up to you. I'll divorce Emily. We can go register our marriage today. From now on, it'll just be you and me. You'll be my only wife, please. I couldn't help but laugh coldly and slapped his hand away when he tried to touch me. I don't care who you marry, but one thing's certain, it will never be me. I met his eyes, steady and clear. David, without you, my life will only get better. You were the dead weight holding me down. His face turned deathly pale, his lips trembling as if only now he'd begun to feel a trace of genuine regret. No, please just listen to me, he stammered. I really do want to make it up to you. The baby's safe. You're only mad because of the marriage certificate, right? I swear I'll get a real one with you, okay? Haven't we made it through so many years already? And now we have a child. How could you leave me now? But all I felt toward him was disgust. I had seen enough of his pathetic performances to last a lifetime. I would never again believe a single word that came out of David Armstrong's mouth. At that moment, a group of uniformed officers stormed into the room. The man leading them wore a badge that clearly marked him as a political commissar. We received a report, he said, his voice firm. Captain David Armstrong is under investigation for abuse of power and violating the rights of fellow officers. Please cooperate with our investigation. Gasps swept through the room. Everyone watched in stunned silence as David was restrained. His own face was frozen in confusion and shock. He hadn't even had time to react before they were already taking him into custody. He struggled violently, shouting, I didn't do anything. There's been a mistake. Someone must have reported me out of spite. The commissar remained calm. We would never act without substantial evidence. At the same time, Emily, who had been cowering in the corner, was also taken into custody. She panicked and screamed. What are you doing? I'm just a civilian. Why are you arresting me? Seeing this, the confident mask David wore finally cracked. His panic was visible now. Both of them were restrained. Then the commissar continued. David Armstrong is suspected of misusing his position, falsifying a military doctor identity, and seizing opportunities meant for others. We'll be taking both of them in. The crowd, seeing all of this unfold, could no longer pretend they didn't understand. David's commanding officer looked furious, his face dark as thunder. Unbelievable, he spat. I promoted you to captain because I trusted you, David. And this is how you repay me? Shameless, completely lacking integrity. Emily was sobbing uncontrollably, trembling inside the ring of guards. David, help me. Please save me. I didn't do anything. It was all your idea. But David couldn't care less. He was barely holding himself together. As they dragged him outside, he twisted back toward me, desperate. Mia, I love you. It was never real with Emily. I swear. Help me. Tell them the truth. I looked at him calmly, cold and composed. And the moment he stepped outside, his eyes widened in realization. It was you. You were the one who found the evidence and reported me. Why? Why would you do this? I replied softly. David, this is your karma. The two of them were taken away, and the once grand banquet slowly fell into silence. Guests began to quietly excuse themselves, one by one. Some stopped to glance at the baby in my arms and sighed. You can't rely on men, one elderly aunt muttered. But life goes on. This little one looks so sweet. He'll grow up to be someone special. I smiled and thanked her. He doesn't have to be exceptional. As long as he doesn't turn out like his father, that'll be good enough for me. The next day, I boarded the northbound train. Before I left, news came in. David had officially been dismissed from his position. Not only had he lost his rank as captain, he'd been dishonorably discharged from the military. A neighbor who delivered the news hesitated for a moment, then asked, Aren't you going to see him one last time? After all, you were married for years. I shook my head. Years of lies and betrayal. There's nothing left to say. Once I was settled in Beijing, I threw myself into work, taking my son with me every step of the way. Life was harder than before, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. On the day I received my promotion, I got a letter from an old neighbor. They mentioned that after David and Emily were released, they divorced almost immediately. David had been trying everything to find out where I had moved to, but no one was willing to help him. Disgraced and utterly ruined, David had lost all influence. Emily, with no one left to rely on and her only child gone, clung to him every day in hysterical grief. Their once secret romance quickly soured into bitter resentment. They became enemies, constantly blaming and resenting each other. Not long after, someone reported that David's house had caught fire. Both he and Emily were found dead inside. Rumor had it Emily had dragged David into a murder-suicide, forcing him to die with her. An old neighbor later wrote to me saying that David had left behind a small amount of money and had asked for his savings book to be sent to me, his former wife, as they put it. After all, we had held a wedding once. They also asked if I would consider coming back for the funeral since neither of them had any family left to claim their remains. I thought about it for a moment and decided to send a little money for the burial costs. That was the last tie I needed to sever. The past was like smoke in the wind, faded and gone. I had no desire to look back, nor to relive any of it. My son babbled softly, pointing toward the windowsill where a golden leaf had drifted down. Outside, the sunlight poured in bright and brilliant, filling the world with warmth.